Hey, new setup. I'm trying something out. I don't know if this is gonna work. Also, I got a mic! I sadly still don't have a webcam. I can probably, update how I look, but I'm good with what I got. So, this is the big event. Albums 2020, my favorites. Now, I'm gonna tell you right now, these are not ranked. I have some notes on my phone of what I'm going to say, put down all the stuff. Overall, there are 65 albums that I'm going to talk about in not so much detail. Some of these I did formally review, some of them I didn't, but I'm going to go into this with an open mind. Let's get into it. The first album on this list is Adrianne by Navy Blue. Part of the slums movement in New York, Navy Blue's debut album is a minimalist, experimental, and jazz rap masterclass. I love how concise his lyrics are, and the beats are extremely minimalist and loopy compared to another more popular album in this sound, Earl Sweatshirt's Some Rap Songs, which Navy Blue was also featured on. Navy Blue is just getting started, and I'm very, very excited to see where he goes from here. My favorite tracks on this were Ode to My Love, In Good Hands, Crash, Life's Riddle, and With Sage. Now we have The Weeknd with After Hours. The Weeknd had a stellar 2020. Blinding Lights was the biggest song of the year. He had this is one of the highest selling albums of 2020, and along with that, he capped off the year with announcing that he's going to be doing the next Super Bowl halftime show in February. Super excited for that. But After Hours is an acid trip through the 80s soundscape, combining his old, more experimental sounds that filled his influential trilogy mixtapes with the sound that made him a global superstar to absolutely magnificent results. This is The Weeknd's best project since Trilogy, the best R&B, if you want to classify it as R&B, the best R&B album of the year, and it is objectively album of the year. There's only a second album, but hey, I gotta say it. My favorite tracks on here were Too Late, Heartless, Escape from LA, Scared to Live, Save Your Tears, Blinding Lights, and After Hours. The next album on this list is Freddie Gibbs and the Alchemist with Alfredo. I've said this about Freddie Gibbs before, but if you pair him with a great producer, there's going to be fireworks. The team-up of Gibbs and the Alchemist for Alfredo is a perfect example of this. Freddie's flows and lyricism is in top form, combining thrilling rhymes with clever flow. The Alchemist's contributions are simple, but very, very effective. Some of my favorite beats of this year appear on here too. It may not be on the level of his projects with Madlib, but this is definitely worth checking out. My favorite tracks on here were God is Perfect, Babies and Fools, Something to Rap About, and Scotty B. Now we have Royce the 5'9", with The Allegory. This guy is 8 solo albums in. Royce isn't losing any steam at all. This is entirely produced by him. This pulls no punches with Royce's writing and a very good ear for beats. And this makes it, and The Allegory, with all of this makes The Allegory one of his best efforts in a 2-decade-long career with already many highs. The anti-vax messages are a little iffy, though. My favorite tracks on this were Overcomer, Young World, Upside Down, On the Block, and Fubu. Next up, we have BTS with B. Capping off the best year of their career so far, the Bangtan Boys kicked off their new era with the lockdown-tinged B, their third project of 2020, and by far their best. The septet have provided their best set of tracks yet here, with catchy pop hooks, nice production, and the ever-positive messages throughout. This album is also a sign that the K-pop genre isn't going anywhere anytime soon. My favorite tracks off of this were Life Goes On, Dynamite, Blue and Gray, and Fly to My Room. Next up, we have Deante Hitchcock with Better. No wonder Deante Hitchcock reminds me of J. Cole. When he was signed to Dreamville, I was very excited to see where this guy would go, and if I'm totally honest, it's better than I expected. Pun intended. Better is a showcase for all the potential that this man has for the future, and you better hop on this shit before he starts making waves. My favorite tracks on here were I Got Money Now, Circles, Angels, Flashbacks, and How the Fuck. Next up is Black Pumas with their self-titled album, or the deluxe edition since that came out this year. When these guys got nominated for Album of the Year at the Grammys this year, I had to check it out, and I'm really impressed with this. I think this is a damn near classic, with nearly every song brimming with talent, musicianship, all across the board. Do not sleep on these guys. My favorite tracks off this were Black Moon Rising, October 33, Fire, and Know You Better. Next is BENEE the Butcher with Burden of Proof. BENEE the Butcher's first solo album in 2 years is his best so far, and one of the best Griselda projects of 2020, with a lot of Griselda projects this year. Strong lyrics from BENEE, as always, and insane beats from Hit Boy, who went on an amazing run in 2020, makes this also one of the more consistent projects from Griselda this year. My favorite tracks off of this were One Way Flight, Burden of Proof, Warpaint, Where Would I Go, and Legend. Next, we have Mac Miller with Circles. The first and most likely only posthumous album from Mac Miller, Circles is absolutely stunning, with this project taking more of a singer-songwriter tone without taking away the hip-hop tones of this. This is the perfect send-off for Mac's career, and I wish that he was still around to see the reception that this got. This is incredible. And also, Hand Me Down is my favorite Mac Miller song. My favorite tracks off this are, well, you guessed it, Hand Me Downs, along with Blue World, Complicated, Circles, and Once a Day. Next, we have Soccer Mommy with Color Theory. Paired with a delicate voice, Color Theory will for sure be a breakout project for Soccer Mommy. And if you're a fan of hers, and you've heard her music before, Color Theory is more of the same, just elevated. It's a little brief, I know, but trust me, this is worth your time. My favorite tracks off of this were Yellow is the Color of Her Eyes, Circle the Drain, Bloodstream, and Lucy. Next, we have Ka with Descendants of Cain. The fifth studio album from Brooklyn rapper Ka, Descendants of Cain is yet another inventive and genius addition to the rapper's discography. Themes of religion permeate this immersive experience in a short, half-an-hour package. Ka's wordplay throughout the track is brilliant. I've never heard anything like this, and this is some of the best I've heard. Ka is a born poet. And if you listen to this for anything, listen to the lyrics. The 50 Cent bar in Unto the Dust is my favorite bar this year. My favorite tracks off of this were The Eye of a Needle, Sins of the Father, Unto the Dust, and Solitude of Enoch. Up next, we have the quartet of Terrace Martin, Kamasi Washington, Robert Glasper, and Ninth Wonder with Dinner Party. Holy shit. Wow. I don't really have a great synopsis for this one, but this is one of the best, if not the best jazz record this year. This is like a powerhouse for everyone that was involved in this. My favorite tracks off of this were First Responders, The Mighty Tree, Sleepless Nights, and Love You. Next up, we have Disclosure with Energy. What would have happened if the clubs were open this year? Nearly all of the songs from this album would be soundtracked in, especially My High, an absolute banger which features vocals from Aminé and Slow Tie. This is one of the best electronic albums this year if you like electronic music. If you want to have a good time and dance, this is the album for you. My favorite tracks off of this were My High, as I said, Birthday, Reverie, and Fractal. Next up, we have Ty Dolla $ign featuring Ty Dolla $ign. Also, shout out, you followed me. I hope you're seeing this. This is a massive collaboration album, and Ty pulls out all the stops for some of his best songs yet, honestly. I've never heard of an album that got the entire music industry on it, and while it isn't a perfect project, it's pretty fun overall. This is a fun project. My favorite tracks were track 6, Temptations, Spicy, Your Turn, and Ego Death. Next up, we have Taylor Swift with Folklore. Stripping away all the glitz and glamour of a typical Taylor Swift project or rollout, Folklore turns to the indie side with more alternate and folk side, and it feels like a chamber pop album at times. And in the process of this, Taylor Swift made the best album of her career. My favorite tracks off of this were Exile, Mirrorball, Betty, The Last Great American Dynasty. Next, we have Conway the Machine with From King to a God. With ever-exciting production and amazing lyrics to boot, From King to a God not only cements Conway as the best member of Griselda, and it also proves the staying power that Griselda's going to have for years to come. This is a pretty versatile album, and for the people that like Griselda, you're in for a thrill ride. This also had a pretty great deluxe as well, with extra songs. My favorite tracks off of this were Spurs 3, Lemon, Anza, Juvenile Hell, and Seen Everything But Jesus. Next, we have Chris Patrick with From the Heart Volume 2. The debut album from New Jersey rapper Chris Patrick is something to behold. What stands out here is his versatility. His ability to seamlessly move from rapping to singing, then back again, is very impressive to me. I haven't heard a lot of artists do this. He carries these beats even though the beats are pretty good already. Features from Deante Hitchcock and Alex Bannon elevate an already great tape from one of the freshest faces in hip-hop today. My favorite tracks off of this were Dreams, Peace of Mind, 3 AM, Typical Shit, and Seattle Interlude. Number 18, well yeah, this is the 18th album. I hope you're keeping track. This is Dua Lipa with Future Nostalgia. In 2020, throughout most of 2020, we were stuck inside, so why not go back to the past? Future Nostalgia is one of the best pop records this year, and while she looks to the past for inspiration, she's actually paving the way for the future of pop with this. My favorite tracks off of this were Break My Heart, Levitating, Don't Start Now, and Physical. The next album on this list is Ólafur with Galore. I have to admit, I don't really have a good way to categorize this album. Is it ambient? Is it trap? Is it pop? Who knows? Either way, this is pretty fucking great. This is emotionally devastating as the Minecraft soundtrack. Specifically Volume Alpha. But it's a lot more... The Minecraft soundtrack is a lot more emotionally devastating than you think. It's kind of crazy what that does at 3 AM. But Galore is pretty unique for a lot of unique music that came out in 2020. Mixing elements of ambient music, trap, and pop, as I said. It's a really weird combination, and it works so well. I cannot wait to see what else Ólafur does in 2021. My favorite tracks off of this were Girl on My Throne, Galore, Unearth Me, Fall, and Rosebud. Next, we have Eve's Tumor with Heaven to a Tortured Mind. This is more of a rock and soul-leaning project than their past releases. Eve's Tumor brings just as much passion and focus to this as their other albums. Sean Bowie's take on art rock is out of this world, and I haven't heard an album like this all year. My favorite tracks off of this were Kerosene, Gospel for a New Age, Gospel for a New Century, A Greater Love, Romanticist, and Folly and Passe. Next is BENEE with Hey You X. Or Kiss, I don't know how it is. Many artists blew up on TikTok this year, but none of them left as much as an impression on me as BENEE. Her debut album is one of the smoothest pop albums this year, and the track Cool is always stuck in my head. There's also some fun collaborations on this that I think you'd want to check out. My favorite tracks off this were Cool, Super Lonely, Winter, Plain, and Sheesh. Next, we have Future, the king of misogyny, with High Off Life. Future is back with his best project in years. For the past couple of years, something felt missing in Future's music. His little duology, Future Hendrix, didn't really do anything for me. Same thing with The Wizard. But somehow, everything about High Off Life just clicked for me. And this is the joyride of an album, even if this isn't a perfect album. My favorite tracks off of this were Too Comfortable, Solitaires, Posted with My Demons, and Ridin' Strikers. Next, we have Charli XCX with How I'm Feeling Now. One of the first albums that was considered to be a quarantine album. Charli XCX, along with Dylan Brady, created a project that was just longing to be heard in a crowd. This felt so much catchier than her past projects, even though it was made in an isolated state. I even still catch myself humming some hooks from this every now and then. My favorite tracks off of this were Forever, Claws, Anthems, 7 Years, and I Finally Understand. Next, we have Poppy with I Disagree. After so many palette swaps with her music, YouTuber / cult leader, maybe? I don't know. I don't know the Poppy lore. Well, Poppy goes full metal on Disagree. One of the first big releases of 2020 that I absolutely fell in love with. And the deluxe version of that with a couple extra tracks came out a couple months later, which revived that love for me. So, Poppy evolved into Metalli on this one. Get it? Well, my favorite tracks off of this were Anything Like Me, Blood Money, Fill the Crown, I Disagree, and Bite Your Teeth. Next up, we have Anna McClellan with I Saw First Light. One of the best indie records from this year, I Saw First Light is Anna McClellan's best album yet. I love her unfiltered lyrics, and they just provide just straight talk that I haven't heard from any artist at her level, or at least that lower, in that indie world. And I'm hoping the best for her future of music. I can't wait to see what else she does. It's really heartfelt and affectionate, and it's really what 2020 needed. My favorite tracks off of this were Veronica, Gone, Feel You, Desperate, and No Wind. Next, we have Thundercat with It Is What It Is. While it may be a similar formula for a Thundercat album, It Is What It Is showcases again a musical master at work. There isn't a lot of pure musicianship in a lot of mainstream music these days, and Thundercat makes me wish that there was more of that in the mainstream. Well, mainstream or not, It Is What It Is a unique, hypnotic, and overall funky listen. My favorite tracks off of this were Fair Chance, Black Qualls, Dragon Ball Durag, King of the Hill, and Funny Thing. Next, we have Arca with Kick 1. A couple artists came to my mind about breaking down barriers this year, but once I thought of Arca, there really wasn't any other choice. Kick 1 dissolves the barriers of the genres that her music was already in, and morphs mainstream sounds into something that has barely been heard before. It's kind of crazy. This is her first album with features as well, and they're all pretty great. Bjork, Sophie, Shy Girl, and Rosalia are all on this. All amazing features. And this is one of the most chaotic albums I've heard in years. There's so much happening in this. And if you like electronic music, listen to this. Do it. My favorite tracks off this were Rip the Slit, KLK, La Cheeky, Rikiki, and Afterwards. Next, we have Bruce Springsteen with A Letter to You. Or, no. Letter to You. There's no A. Letter to me? Bruce, you shouldn't have. Come on. There's a lot of people out there that like your music. But hey, I'm honestly very glad that Bruce is still making music. Reuniting with his famed E Street Band, this is an anthemic and passionate record that was recorded in less than a week. While I do prefer his last album, Western Stars, this album feels like you're sitting with your father or grandfather as he speaks about the past over a bonfire. That's the image I get when I listen to this, and I love it. It's very specific, but then again, this type of music isn't anything new for Bruce, but he's still really damn good at it. My favorite tracks off of this were Ghosts, Janie Needs a Shooter, I'll See You in My Dreams, Burning Train, and House of a Thousand Guitars. Next, we have Aminé with Limbo. I'm going to be totally honest, I thought that Aminé was going to be a one-hit wonder. I'm very glad he isn't, though, because we wouldn't have gotten Limbo. This has finally cemented Aminé in my mind as a force to be reckoned with in the music industry. This project is witty, it's catchy as hell, and along with that, the features on here are sick and add a bunch to the experience. Limbo will hopefully be that project that breaks Aminé out of that one-hit wonder image. My favorite tracks off of this were Becky, Pressure in My Palms, Compensatin', Burden, and Woodlawn. Next, we have One O Tricks Point Never with Magic One O Tricks Point Never. Executive produced by The Weeknd, Daniel Lopatin's return to the OPN name in the form of a nostalgic and magical radio station, Magic 106.7, where Lopatin actually got the name of this alias from. His glitchy vocals remind me of Bon Iver's 22 A Million quite a bit, and I adore that album, so that might have something to do with it. Honestly, this is just OPN at its finest. If you like electronic music, if you've heard OPN's music before, listen to this, you'll like it just as much. My favorite tracks off of this were No Nightmares, Imago, Lost But Never Alone, Wave Idea, and Long Road Home. Next, we have Kid Cudi with Man on the Moon 3, The Chosen. After a decade-long wait, the third and possibly final installment of Kid Cudi's Man on the Moon trilogy is here. It was a little jarring to hear him on trap beats at first, but Cudi rides his waves very well, and when he gets back to his usual stuff in the second half, it's like he never left. It's really nostalgic, and it's pretty awesome, honestly. Plus, Cudi and Phoebe Bridgers harmonizing at the end of Lovin' Me is a god-tier moment in music this year. Awesome. My favorite tracks off of this were Lovin' Me, She Knows This, The Void, The Pale Moonlight, and Damaged. Next up, we have Boldy James and Sterling Tolles with Manger on McNichols. I am a little late to the party on this one, I just heard this in November. But I believe that Manger on McNichols is 2020's Good Kid, Mad City. The storytelling that Boldy James does here is dark and very difficult to digest, and if you make it through, it is really, really rewarding. This is one of my favorite concept albums this year, and whoever this Sterling Tolles guy is, I want to find out more about this guy. That Sterling Tolles produced this album, and it sounds beautiful. This is stunning. And also, I learned this when I was writing this. This album took 13 years to record. That's something else. That's very impressive to me, and it sounded perfect. My favorite tracks off of this were Requiem, Mommy Dearest, a eulogy, Birth of Bold, the christening, Got Flicked, the rebirth, and The Safe. Next, we have Blue and Exile with Miles from an interlude called Life. Dedicated to legendary jazz figure Miles Davis, rapper Blue and producer Exile have come together once again to create a massive 90-minute jazz rap epic that takes on the racial injustices that plague America today. Blue's rapping and writing are strong as ever, but what really elevates this project to me is Exile's production. The more jazzy aspects give this more beauty. And honestly, if you don't know me, I'm a sucker for a good sample, and there's that all over the place on here. My favorite tracks on here are When the Gods Meet, Spread Sunshine, Music Is My Everything, Miles Away, and The American Dream. Next up, we have Grimes with Miss Anthropocene. Claire Boucher, aka Grimes, isn't bound to a genre, and that's great. Miss Anthropocene is a great album, but it doesn't feel as innovative to me as her other albums. This was highly anticipated by fans, and that might have to do why her fans didn't enjoy this as much. But with a cohesive sound and overall pretty good songs across the board, this was a job well done, and I really like it. My favorite tracks off of this were My Name is Dark, Violence, So Heavy I Fell Through the Earth, Dark Side, and Delete Forever. Next up, we have Dorian Electra with My Agenda. Hyperpop has becoming more and more mainstream because of artists like Charli XCX and 100 gecs, but Dorian Electra is one of the artists that have already mastered the genre. My Agenda is a chaotic and pretty horny collection of songs that is definitely one of the weirdest projects I've heard in a while. Also, if you can get the Village People and Pussy Riot on a song and make it work, that's something else. My favorite tracks off this were Edgelord, My Agenda, Gentleman, Ram It Down, and Give Great Thanks. Next, we have Joji with Nectar. One of the projects that I was looking forward to the most in 2020. Joji's sophomore effort is a perfect pop album. This is played out like Gen Z short films, and the progression that Joji has gone through from Ballads 1 only a couple years ago to this, it can't go unnoticed. This is my favorite pop album from this year and one of the best offerings of 2020. My favorite tracks off of this were Run, Like You Do, Afterthought, Mr. Hollywood, and Daylight. Next up, we have Red Veil with Niagara. Wow. Wow. This kid has so much potential. I don't want to call him a kid because he's younger than me. He's 16, but this is insane. His debut album, Niagara, isn't a new voice in this slums movement. He's a bright and refreshing sound, especially when he's using that in his beats. This entire album was made in his bedroom. If he keeps going in this direction and can get into a studio, we're in for a game changer here. My favorite tracks off of this were Revolutions, Campbell, Pigeon Man, 5500, and Grass. The next album on this list is Rico Nasty with Nightmare Vacation. If you ever wanted unfiltered madness in an album, it's probably where you want to go. I commend this for being one of the only debut projects this year that is a great vision for the sound palettes that would fit an artist like Rico Nasty. Crazy off-the-wall experimental sounds mixed with more mainstream rap and R&B is something I never thought I would have liked on paper, but Rico Nasty just put me onto a sound. Thank you, Rico. Very cool. My favorite tracks off of this were Oh For Real, Back and Forth, iPhone, Don't Like Me, and Smack a Bitch. Next, we have Logic with No Pressure. When Logic announced that he was retiring with his latest effort, it felt odd. Yes, Logic's past albums really sucked. But because of that, I was still kind of skeptical going into this. But thank God, No Pressure is the best Logic has sounded in years. And while it's sad to see that he's done for now, I'm very happy with these results. Thank you for giving us a good career, Logic. Awesome. My favorite tracks off of this were A to Z, Perfect, Soul Food 2, Hit My Line, and Open Mic Aquarius 3. Next, we have Isaac Zale and Cherry Blue with None of the Keys Fit. I discovered a lot of artists this year through Twitter, and none of them impressed me as much as Isaac Zale. His collaboration with producer Cherry Blue is a great debut from one of the new generation's brightest stars. And it's quite frankly one of the best debut albums from this year. It's awesome. I think you'd love it. My favorite tracks off of this were Seeds, F a Friend, Oracle, Hannah's Ballad, and Moncler Noose. Next, we have Action Bronson with Only for Dolphins. While this is more of a straightforward listen, Only for Dolphins is slick. This is a slick album, and while he isn't the most unique rapper out there, he shines over these jazzy beats and even has some of my favorite beats this year. My favorite tracks off of this were C12, H16, and 2, Shredder, Marcus Aurelius, Goldeneye, and Latin Grammys. Next, we have Black Dresses with Peaceful as Hell. Black dresses are in an area of music where you'll either hate it or absolutely love it. I'm in the area where I absolutely love it. Peaceful as Hell is so obscure that it's very hard to classify what genre this even is. It's another one of those albums. I'm struggling to do it. If you're looking for some loud and psychedelic music, this is going to be right up your alley. It is pretty sad that Black Dresses may be defunct as a group now. We're not really sure, but I do hope there's more material that come out of this. My favorite tracks off of this were Mirror Girl, 666, Scared to Death, Angel Hair, and Sharp Halo. Next, we have Baauer with Planets Mad. Do you remember the Harlem Shake? Do you? Well, this is the guy that made that song. And the redemption arc that he went through on this is incredible. This album's an absolute blast. This type of club music isn't really my jam sometimes, but this was banger after banger. In a genre of music that's really oversaturated all the time, this is a good fresh breath of air that the genre needs right now. My favorite tracks off of this were Magic, Cool 171, Reach Up Don't Stop, Yahoo, and Remina. Next, we have Miley Cyrus with Plastic Hearts. What the hell? This is a massive improvement over her past 3 projects. This is her rock opus. While there are still flashes of her past albums, I mean, come on, this album's flawed. The highs that are hit on this album are the highest of her career by far. Who knew that a rock edge and a raspier singing voice would be all that Miley needed to make her best music since Hannah Montana? Yeah, I watched Hannah Montana. Shut up. My favorite tracks off of this were What the Fuck Do I Know, Plastic Hearts, Midnight Sky, and Prisoner. Next, we have West Side Gun with Pray for Paris. Of the many, many, many Griselda projects that came out in 2020, Pray for Paris stands out as one of the most luxurious rap projects to come out this year. West Side Gun is at a creative peak here, getting his best features and the best beats of his career, along with having his own unique sound overall. He's a very good curator, and it's a shame that he's reportedly retiring from music in 2021, but he'll still be focusing on the Griselda label. So, I'm glad to know he still has a part in everything. I just hope he isn't retiring. My favorite tracks off of this were Versace, George Bondo, 327, $500 Ounces, and Sean vs. Flair. Phoebe Bridgers is up next with Punisher. One of the most emotionally challenging albums I've heard this year. Punisher is a star-making turn for Phoebe Bridgers. Her songwriting is in peak form, her vocals are absolutely haunting, and the production is so stripped back that it's disturbingly intimate. Like, asking the most uncomfortable questions ever intimate. It's that intimate. Along with that, I Know the End is the best closer of this year. My favorite tracks off of this were Kyoto, I Know the End, Halloween, Moonsong, and Savior Complex. Next, we have Run the Jewels with RTJ4. Arguably the most politically charged album of 2020, the 4th outing with Killer Mike and LP as Run the Jewels is a very necessary album. This is a rebellion album, and it's damn near prophetic of how incredible these two are together on this project. Whew! Goddamn, what an album. I'm pretty much speechless about this project. It may not be my rap album of the year, but damn, this is a must listen. My favorite tracks off of this were Out of Sight, Ooh La La, Just, A Few Words for the Firing Squad, Radiation, and Pulling the Pin. Next up, we have 21 Savage and Metro Boomin with Savage Mode 2. While it may not be as sinister as the original, 21 Savage and Metro Boomin reunite for the long-awaited Savage Mode 2 to a lot of success. Throughout each of their careers, they've gone through so much progression, and when they re-met after this is the best product that they've put out in their careers. You know, and Morgan Freeman's always a plus too. That SZA bar that Drake said was whack though, that was bad. My favorite tracks off of this were Mr. Right Now, Many Men, R.I.P. Love, Runnin', and I can't say the name of this track, so the track with Young Thug is also a favorite. Next, we have Rina Sawayama with Sawayama. One of the biggest pop breakouts of 2020, Rina Sawayama really impressed me with her debut album. Drawing on her personal history and herself, all held up by a very impressive set of songs that feel unique to her. That's what every self-titled album should be, honestly. That's just me. My favorite checks off of this were XS, Bad Friend, Tokyo Love Hotel, Snakeskin, and Comme des Garçons. Next, we have Ólafur Arnalds with Some Kind of Peace. I've gotten into ambient music very recently, and it's worth noting Ólafur Arnalds' latest body of work. I've played this album when I've fallen asleep, and it works perfectly. It's also a great way to cancel out all the chaos in the world that was throughout 2020 and the future. Just put this on, close your eyes, and relax. My favorite tracks off of this were New Grass, Loom, Stale Sound, Zero, and The Bottom Line. Next, we have Laura Marling with Song for Our Daughter. Wow. I fell instantly in love with this album. Laura Marling is a genius. Song for Our Daughter is a masterpiece, and quite frankly, this is one of the best singer-songwriter albums I've heard in a long time. And the crazy part is, this isn't even the best singer-songwriter album of 2020. I think that belongs to Phoebe Bridgers. If you like artists like Phoebe Bridgers or Wise Blood, give this a shot. My favorite tracks off of this were Hope We Meet Again, Strange Girl, Held Down, Fortune, and The End of the Affair. Next up, we have Gorillaz with Song Machine Season 1, Strange Times. This album grew on me, like, a lot. At first, I didn't really get it. I didn't get this album, but the more and more I listened to it, it finally clicked recently. This is what Humans should have been. This should have been Gorillaz' comeback album, as much as I like the Now. The collaborations on this are genius, and they all somehow work. So, my favorite tracks off of this were Opium with Earth Gang, Momentary Bliss with Slaves and Slow Tie, Pac-Man with Schoolboy Q, MLS with JPEG Mafia and Chai, I think it is, and The Pink Phantom with Elton John and Black. Next, we have Adrianne Lenker with Songs. Paired with the equally great album Instrumentals, Adrianne Lenker splits off from Big Thief to make Songs. An intimate experience with one of my favorite first listens this year. I get sent into this specific state of mind when listening to this album. I feel warm and comfy. I feel like everything's gonna be okay. And this album proves that sometimes all you need for good music is a guitar and a voice. My favorite tracks off of this were Zombie Girl, Dragonized, Two Reverse, Ingadar, and Come. Next up is Yukika with Soul Lady. I can say without a doubt this is my favorite K-pop record from this year. I'll give it that. Soul Lady is one of those aesthetically pleasing albums that makes you feel like you're in 1980s Tokyo with a bunch of friends in a club. It's a really fun vibe overall, and I Feel Love is one of my favorite tracks this year. Off of that, my favorite tracks were I Feel Love, A Day for Love, Cherry's Jubilee, Shade, and Yesterday. Next is Aesop Rock with Spirit World Field Guide. I don't want to use the term lyrical miracle, because that's usually reserved for, like, you can rap fast, but what are you saying? This one is like a true lyrical miracle. This man is a dictionary and a thesaurus rolled into one. That doesn't make sense, but come on. Spirit World Field Guide is pretty nuts to look at for how long Aesop Rock has been in the game. And the lyrics and the production is off the wall. Best way I could describe it is, this is a Rick and Morty album. This is like if Rick and Morty was music. It's crazy. My favorite tracks off of this were The Gates, Boot Soup, Marble Cake, Button Masher, and Kodakushi. Next up, we have Chloe and Halle with Ungodly Hour. Beyonce proteges Chloe and Halle mature on their debut album, which is one of the best R&B offerings this year. Their ability to just simply make catchy R&B tunes are top-notch for their age, and it's incredible to see. Along with that, Halle's going to be playing Ariel in Disney's remake of The Little Mermaid. That's awesome. This also proves how much more attention Chloe and Halle are going to get. And for more people are going to listen to this album. And I'm so excited. My favorite tracks off of this were Do It, Wonder What She Thinks of Me, Forgive Me, Busy Boy, and Overwhelmed. Next, we have Denzel Curry and Kenny Beats with Unlocked. Denzel Curry and Kenny Beats, they're doing it again. They're making good music again. Unlocked is very reminiscent of old MF Doom projects, and quite frankly, Curry sounds great over boom bap beats. We need more of that. Plus, the way that this was promoted with like YouTube visuals and like a short film that connected all of them was sick. It was awesome. Also, this has some of my favorite production from all this year too. Kenny did great on the beats. My favorite tracks off of this were Take It Back, Diet, and Pyro. Next, we have Clipping, with visions of bodies being burned. Most sequels end up being just out of reach of the original, but that is not the case here. The follow-up to 2019's There Existed an Addiction to Blood, this Clipping album is a visceral, mind-melting experience that has to be heard to be believed. In a world where not many horror films came out this year, or quite frankly, not many films at all, Clipping has cemented themselves as one of the most exciting artists or groups in music right now. Even though I said that these aren't really ranked, Visions of Bodies Being Burned is without a doubt my rap album of the year. This is insane. My favorite tracks off of this were Enlacing, Say the Name, Something Underneath, 96 Nev Campbell, Check the Lock, and Make Them Dead. Next up, we have the Avalanches with We Will Always Love You. Cohesion. That is the best way to describe this album. Oh my god. This is incredible. I love the sound of this. The production of this is off the charts. The features are amazing. And since this is a relatively new album, my points still stand for my separate review. So if you want to hear more on this, go back to that. My favorite tracks off of this were Take Care in Your Dreaming, Gold Sky, Interstellar Love, Song for Barbara Payton, and A Divine Chord. Next, we have Mike with Weight of the World. Another album from the Slums movement. Mike has been one of the pioneers for this sound for a couple years now, and with Weight of the World, he's finally made a truly great album out of it. Along with that, he brought Earl Sweatshirt onto this, which is always great. Earl Sweatshirt's always great. This one is more Plunderphonics inspired than most Slums albums, but Weight of the World has basically one of my favorite sounds of 2020. I love the whole thing with the Slums movement. My favorite tracks off of this were All Star, 222, Coat of Many Colors, Trail of Tears, and More Gifts. Next, we have Ichiko Aoba with Windswept Adan. Damn, this album's beautiful. From a production standpoint, this is the best sounding album of 2020. I've said that for a lot of albums already, but this is really it. Like, all of them are in competition with each other, but this is clearly the top. I have such an emotional connection with this album, even though I don't know Japanese. This album is proof that emotions don't have language barriers, and that this is one of the best albums of 2020. My favorite tracks off of this were Chinokaze, Chinuhaji, Easter Lily, Prologue, and Dawn in the Adan. Next, we have Shawn Mendes with Wonder. He genuinely surprised me this year. He made a good album. Good for him. This is very mature, and there's so much growth here. And while the typical Shawn Mendes themes and stereotypes are still here, the glossier sound and production elevates Wonder to a whole new level. My favorite tracks off of this were Teach Me How to Love, the intro, which is also amazing, Monster, Wonder, and Piece of You. Next, we have Jay Electronica with A Written Testimony. After 10 years of waiting and anticipation and all that building up, Jay Electronica's debut album finally released this year, and it somehow lived up to the hype. This was great. Also, Jay-Z is on every song on this. I feel that the lo-fi atmosphere that was throughout this album will find its way into mainstream hip-hop throughout this decade because of this album. And while Hove's appearances were pretty great on here, A Written Testimony proves that age can't stop someone from making it big, especially with someone that has the amount of talent that Jay Electronica has. My favorite tracks off of this were API DTA, The Blinding, Shiny Suit Theory, Ghost of Soulja Slim, and The Neverending Story. Next, we have 100 gecs with 1,000 gecs and The Tree of Clues. One of the biggest remix albums I've ever heard, 100 gecs team up with veterans across nearly every genre of music for remixes of their debut album, 1,000 gecs. Artists like Fall Out Boy, Nicole Dollanganger, Dorian Electra, Rico Nasty, Caro Caro Bonito, and Charli XCX, and so much more, contribute to this absolutely insane project. This is a great gateway to the hyperpop genre, and it's through some of the more recognizable artists that you've heard. My favorite tracks off of this were both remixes of Ringtone, both remixes of Hand Crushed by a Mallet, and both remixes of 745 Sticky. And finally, the last album on this list is Childish Gambino, 3:15:20. I was absolutely thrown off by this album when it first came out. I had no clue what to think of it. But as time went on, I really started to like this project. This is a very strange album coming from Childish Gambino, but yet it's so interesting. This is yet another album from 2020 that I can't pin a specific genre to, because there's so much happening here. And as I said, it's strange, but to fully experience it, you just need to hear it. My favorite tracks off of this were 2419, 1238, Algorithm, 4226, and Time. And that's going to do it. Thank you for tuning in for this last month. I start up school in a little bit, so my content output is not going to be as much as it has been. I'll probably get out like maybe 1 or 2 reviews a week, and I'll definitely be like doing recaps every now and then of like what I listened to over the month. But thank you for sticking with me. This is the last video of 2020 if it gets out by then. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you like the video. If you subscribed just now, you can go back and look at all my stuff. So, other than that, thank you so much. I'll see you in the new year, alright? Bye.